Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10 and support the channel at the same time. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends. We got a big day of Dominaria previews. 17 cards altogether. We're going to recap them all for you, and I'll give you some quick thoughts on them. Some of these we did see in the big leak, but we're finally seeing the full card with art, flavor, text, as well as rarity, which is very important. There's a few cards here that also were, I don't know if you want to consider it a leak, but the promo cards are starting to get out to stores, and we did get some photographs of promo cards from a Spanish language source that we're going to see also in this video as well. There's a handful of those. Also, on top of all of that, Wizards teased a new commander format that they're going to talk more about tomorrow. I'll let you know the details, at least what we know so far about it. With that being said, quickly before we get started though, just a really fast reminder, if you check out the description below, you'll find a few ways to help support what we do here at the channel. You'll find our Patreon page link there. You'll find links to products on Amazon. If you make any purchases on Amazon, no matter what it is, once you go through that first link, we'll get a small percentage. And then finally, Flipside Gaming, also offering a promo code still for our viewers. And you can hopefully save some cash, support the channel at the same time. Thank you to everyone, not only if you look at those links, but to all our viewers. You all make this channel what it is. And with that being said, let's get into it. We'll begin with a few of the Spanish language promo cards that we saw, starting with some Friday Night Magic promos. This is the first one, and it's a card you're probably pretty familiar with. It is Opt, which of course we saw in Ixalan not too long ago. Now, just because a card is a Friday Night Magic promo doesn't always mean that it is in the current set or the newest set. However, the way they're numbering these now, it does give us indication that this is actually a card from Dominaria. If you look at the bottom left-hand corner of the card, it says number 60 of 269 DOM. So it does appear that this is actually in the set. And if you can trust the rarity symbol, which of course I realize is maybe not the best picture quality, it looks like it is a common. So that makes sense and is in line with what we saw from Ixalan. Opt's a good card for limited. You see this played, it helps you get to your bigger threats, move through your deck a little bit faster. And I really like the art, not to mention the fact that the text box has that Magic logo. Looks pretty sweet. Now our next Friday Night Magic promo is a card we have not seen yet, but it appears that, loosely translated, it is Fall into Obscurity, a black and 1 instant destroy target non-legendary creature, and it looks like it's going to be an uncommon in the set. This is really sweet. Now, very reminiscent of Doomblade. Now, there's limitations here. Obviously, if you're talking about Standard, for example, there's powerful legendary creatures like Hezarats and the Scarab God they have to worry about, and this isn't going to help you against those. But this is going to be a cheap, quick way at instant speed to deal with a lot of problems that do exist, and that's actually pretty amazing. This definitely sees Standard play, and this is awesome in Limited too, probably first pickable in a lot of packs. Now, there's a lot of legendary creatures, obviously, in the set from what we have been seeing. However, I don't think that's going to be an issue. This card is going to deal with a lot of threats that could come up. Alright, this is our last Friday Night Magic promo reveal. It's a card we saw in the big leak. It is Shanna Sisay's Legacy. It costs a green and white. It's a legendary creature, human warrior. 0/0 stats. It can't be the target of abilities your opponents control, and it will get +1/+1 for each creature you control. We are learning, though, for the first time, it appears that it will be in the set as an uncommon, so that's actually pretty cool. Now, for the card itself, it feels like something I'd really want to try out in Commander first and foremost. I mean, it could be your Commander, but even if it's not, being able to put this in like a Selesnya go-wide token deck feels like it could be a lot of fun. Now, for Standard, I don't really see the card getting there because it's just too dependent on your board state. They are giving you tools, obviously, in this set. We'll see more as we go forward, but there are ways to create Saproling tokens in green, for example, and white and green tend to go wide anyway, and even like white weenie decks or Selesnya weenie decks have been able to make it into Standard in the past. So, I mean, sure, it's a little bit early before I make an official call. We haven't seen a lot of the set yet, but I will say this, even if a deck like that gets there, I do think this one's just too dependent on board state for me to feel comfortable, and also the fact that it's legendary makes me feel like this could be a little bit inconsistent for me when I draw it at times. Now, limited, yeah, you know what? If I have a lot of Saproling creation, this could be a really good 2-drop for me, even though it is 2 different colors. Also, I should point out, this is the first time we get a look at the legendary card frame, so that stylized top is not because it's a promo card. That's actually what legendary cards are going to look like going forward. I think it looks pretty cool. You'll get some better examples as we go throughout the video that are more clear. Next, we get a look at our draft weekend card, and this is a brand new one. It's a rare that we haven't seen before. It is Zahi, Genie of the Lamp. It costs 2 blue and 4 legendary creature Djinn. You may pay a blue and 3 and tap an untapped artifact you control instead of paying the mana cost of the spell. It has flying. It's a 5/6. This is kind of a fun callback to Mahamoti Djinn from Alpha Beta Unlimited. It's a 5/6 flyer, 2 blue and 4, just like that original card. It's also a Djinn. But it adds a little more top-down design by trying to give you the feel that you're getting the genie out of the bottle, if you will, by tapping one of your artifacts and then paying a blue and 3. So you can cheat this into play a little bit earlier. Is it good enough to see standard play? Don't really think it gets there, unfortunately, because if you don't have the artifact to push it out faster, a 5/6 flyer for 6 doesn't feel great in that format. Even if you do, it does feel like it might even be a little bit slow and a little fragile for the format right now, the way it stands. So, maybe not there, but in Limited, this will be a great card for you. In that case, a 5/6 flyer for 6 is actually pretty strong, and if you can cheat it out a little bit earlier, wonderful. Our next promo is an open house promo, and it's another card we knew was going to be there, Llanowar Elves. It costs a green, it's an elf druid, and you can tap it for a green mana. It's 1/1. We find out now, though, officially that it is a common, it appears. Again, if you can trust the reflection on the picture there, which I think it does appear to be common. So that's actually pretty awesome. Glad that it's in the set at common. That's going to be great for Limited. First pickable in a lot of packs, no doubt. This is just a powerful card that allows you to jump the curve a little bit. Now, the drawback here, obviously, is that you don't want to draw this later in the game. But you know what? You'll take that risk time and time again, because the times you do get it out on turn 1, turn 2, it can really outpace your opponent. It's pretty amazing. And this will see standard play as it has in the past. It's just that good. Alright, our next card is a Store Championship promo. Another card we saw in the big league. It's Steel Leaf Champion. Costs 3 green, and this is an Elf Knight 5/4. Can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, and we find out that officially this will be a rare. And again, another powerful card here. This maybe could see some standard play, perhaps in monster-style decks. 3 green can be a little more difficult to swing, obviously, but getting the 5/4 with that ability is pretty strong. And in standard, it's a little easier to pull off because you will have dual lands and such to ease out your curve. In Limited, it might be harder sometimes, but if you can swing the 3 green casting cost, of course, go ahead and play this. It'll be a bomb for you. Here's another card that we have not yet seen. This one's actually pretty cool. It's an uncommon. Zhalfir Waste. It's a land, and when this enters the battlefield, scry 1, you can tap to add a colorless mana to your mana pool. This will be the League promo that you're seeing there. So it's a scry land, but it doesn't come into play tapped. Now, granted, it just gives you colorless mana. That's the drawback, but there's going to be a lot of decks that I don't think will care, especially considering there is a pretty strong artifact element to this set, it appears. And even in standard, if these artifacts help push some of the Kaladesh block artifacts, maybe we will have decks running a lot of colorless spells. And if that's the case, this definitely sees standard play. I think it will see standard play. I think the power level there, scrying just for putting a land on the battlefield is very, very good. If you remember the scry lands, of course, from the Theros block, for example. So I do think it sees standard play, and in Limited as well. It's a little tricky in Limited. Some decks that are a little more color intensive may need to skip this. But a lot of decks, if they just have a lot of artifacts or they have a good color balance, yeah, this could work pretty well for them. Alright, this last promo is the Buy a Box promo. A lot of information about this card, so hang on for a second, we'll go through it. It's a white, a red, and 4 legendary creature, Minotaur Cleric 4/6. Red instant and sorcery spells you control have lifelink. When a white instant or sorcery spell causes you to gain life, Fire Song and Sunspeaker deal 3 damage to target creature or player. Okay, a few things you need to know about this. First off, if you notice the bottom left corner, the number of the card is 280 of 269. Well, that's weird, right? Well, what does that mean? Well, what it means is there is no way to get this card other than buying a box. This is exclusive to buying a box. You will not find this in packs. This will not be in Planeswalker decks. The only place to get this will be to go to your local game store and buy a box while supplies last. Real quick, one other thing I want to point out that just came out. This is kind of breaking news too from Wizards. They are allowing local game stores to actually let you pick up your pre-ordered booster boxes at the pre-release. So if you go to your LGS, pre-order a booster box of Dominaria, you go to the pre-release, you can actually pick it up there, and you don't have to wait another week for the set to come out. That's pretty crazy as well, and a very new thing that they're trying out. Now, one more tidbit about this card that they dropped when they announced it. Tomorrow, Wizards is going to give us more information on a new rotating commander format. This is something they have been testing and experimenting with, and they're going to debut it tomorrow in an article. And it's going to be called Brawl. Basically what they said was it's going to use standard cards and it's going to rotate, presumably like standard. Now, they didn't say anything about deck sizes, commander requirements, ban lists, anything like that. I'm sure we'll hear a lot more tomorrow. I was a little skeptical when I read it. I do want to reserve judgment until we get all the details, so there's a lot more coming tomorrow, I'm sure, and we'll talk more about this. But, standard being a rotating format is one of the reasons that I have a hard time getting into that format. Just keeping up with the rotations and then investing in it and then having to sell off your cards just was something that never really appealed to me. Personally, I know a lot of people do enjoy it, but thinking there's going to be another rotating format, it's not something I feel like I want to buy into. The other concern I had was now that you have two formats that could be more interested in standard cards, does that mean the price of standard goes up, or vice versa, the price of this new format goes up as well because you're competing with standard players for cards? I don't know, I just felt a little skeptical, like I said. I suppose this could be an okay thing if they're doing it mostly for Magic Arena, or something like that, because we do know Magic Arena is not going to have cards from the history of Magic right away or anything like that. So if they want to be able to include a commander type format, then maybe this is their answer, and that's kind of cool. I like that idea. But converting it over to paper makes me a little shaky. We'll have to kind of wait and see what all the details are. Also, I should mention something about the card. The card itself feels a little high price for standard, which I'm sure they did on purpose, considering that this card may be difficult to get a hold of. But beyond that, looks like it could be fun in Commander or just for casual gameplay. Knight of Grace. This is a white and 1 human knight 2/2 first strike hexproof from black. Knight of Grace gets +1/+0 as long as any player controls a black permanent. This is an uncommon. So we did see this in the leak a couple weeks ago, but now we know for sure it's an uncommon. And my feelings haven't changed really about it. I do think this is going to be good for you in Limited, especially if you're playing against somebody who has black cards. So if you're not playing it for some reason, side it in. Secondly, though, it's very playable because it's a 2/2 with all upside for 2. That's kind of awesome. It's got first strike, the hexproof from black, also that ability that can make it larger sometimes. And that is any player, so it goes well with the black and white knight strategy, which you might be able to draft into, for example. Now, beyond that, standard, I'm a little skeptical that the knight tribe is going to be a thing in standard. I think it's more of a draft archetype, casual deck maybe, a little bit of commander play perhaps. I just feel like when it comes to standard, we just had 2 sets try to push tribal, and in most cases not really successfully when it comes to standard crossover. So I don't really see the knights coming out of 1 set and doing it. So that kind of is what it is there. I know there's been controversy when we talked about the whole hexproof from colors as opposed to protection from colors. Personally, I like protection from colors. However, it does appear that hexproof from is the direction they're going to be going in the future with cards like this. And I don't know, I do feel the old way is more powerful, obviously, but I also understand the new way is going to be easier to understand for newer players. And yeah, it's important to get new players into the game, so I get it. I'll miss it, though. I'll miss protection from various colors. And again, just a reminder that hexproof, by definition, does not do anything in combat. So if you attack with this, it can be blocked by a black creature. It's going to take damage from black creatures. It's just protecting this creature from your opponent's spells that are in black. Serra Disciple. This is a white 1. It's a creature, bird cleric, common, 1/1, flying for a strike. Whenever you cast a historic spell, this will get +1/+1 till end of turn. And as a reminder, historic spells are artifacts, legendaries, and sagas. This is a new card we haven't seen yet, and it actually feels pretty good. This is going to be decent for you, I think, in Limited at common. It's small, it's a 1/1 for 2, that doesn't feel good, but it has flying, it has first strike, and there's going to be plenty of ways to buff this thing. Look at all the options you have. There's going to be good artifacts in the set, it looks like. Tons of legendary creatures, the sagas are kicking around. So I do think you could get a lot of damage off a card like this, as long as it survives, of course. And if it doesn't, your opponent's going to have to use a removal spell on a 1/1/2 casting cost, so that will trade up some of the time. Now, as far as standard goes, could it get there? I don't know, maybe. There's a lot of good artifacts already in Kaladesh block that are still kicking around in standard. And if we get some new ones added here, maybe there's a deck that's artifact-centric that uses this to put across damage in the air. That could be kind of cool. So, I don't know, maybe. It's a little bit of a stretch. We have a long ways to go and a lot to see of this set, but I won't count it out yet. Now for one of the legendary sorceries, Urza's Ruinous Blast. This is going to cost a white and 4. Of course, it's a legendary sorcery, meaning you can only play this if you have a legendary creature or planeswalker already in play, and it will exile all non-land permanents that aren't legendary. Now, we have seen this card before, but we are finding out now for the first time that it is at rare. So a few things about this card. Obviously, it's a very powerful effect as long as you can cast it, and that's where it gets a little bit tricky, and I think that's going to hold it back a little bit in Standard, for example, because yes, there are a lot of good legendary creatures coming. I mean, Planeswalkers do see a fair amount of play in Standard, Chandra and Vraska and such, right? However, you are relying on the fact that you have one of those in play to be able to even cast this thing, or else it's a dead draw. That doesn't feel really good, especially considering there's a lot of good board sweeps that are out there. We saw a lot of them in Hour of Devastation. They're still around. So I don't know if I need to take the risk on this when it comes to the World of Standard. Now, could it make it into maybe an approach deck alongside some Gideons or something like that? It's possible. I wouldn't count it out, but it is a card that is going to be very niche, I think, if it does get there. Now, aside from that, it also doesn't deal with some of the big threats that are in the format because it can't deal with legendaries. So it can't deal with Hazoret, can't deal with the Scarab God. That's going to be a problem for this card too, I think, ultimately. Now, beyond that, in Limited, this is going to be great for you. Granted, it's still a dead draw if you don't have a legendary creature in play, but the set is giving you a lot of options there. So I do think it's playable more often than not there. And Commander, I mean, your Commander is going to be legendary, right? So that is a way to turn this card on. It could be very good there. Again, it's a little awkward because it doesn't hurt your opponent's commanders, though. Academy Drake. This is another new one. Blue and 2, Drake at common 2/2. It's kicker 4. Has flying, but if it was kicked, it will come in with 2+1/+1 counters on it. Good limited card. Not a lot to say about this one. It's a Windrake, basically, which is very limited playable. And later in the game, if you draw it, it actually can become bigger, a 4/4 flyer. And even though it's costing you a little bit, you're paying for it. Later in the game, you won't mind paying for it if you have the extra mana lying around. Vicious Offering, another new card that is actually kind of sweet. This is a black and 1 instant at common. Kicker, sack a creature. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. If this spell was kicked, then that creature gets -5/-5 until end of turn instead. I'm going to jump right to Standard with this one because this actually seems pretty sweet. 2 casting cost, instant speed card. Another good removal spell here in black that's very cheap and very quick. And if I don't have the creature to sacrifice, okay, it deals with a small threat. But if I do have the creature to sacrifice, I can deal with things like Hazoret. I can deal with Ruinous. I can deal with Glorybringer, for example. These are all cards that are very prevalent in the World of Standard right now, and this is an answer to them. Now, yes, you do have to sacrifice something, but I'll be honest, there's very few things I would even think twice about not sacrificing if I'm facing down a Hazoret, right? So I would certainly go ahead and pay that kicker most of the time without even blinking an eye. Now, beyond that, we're seeing a lot of token creation, at least coming from green in this set, and it looks like black's trying to do the Aristocrats thing. So maybe that itself could be a deck in Standard. We'll have to, again, wait and see, and if the pieces are there, wonderful. But even if that deck doesn't happen, this card is still seeing play in Standard, no doubt. And in Limited, this is probably first pickable in a lot of packs again for you. It's going to be very strong. Keldon Overseer. This is one we've seen before, but we now know it will be a common. It's a red and 2, Human Warrior 3/1, kicker, red and 3. It has haste. When it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature, it gains haste till end of turn. So for Limited, this is a fine card. A 3/1 with haste for 3 is going to be very good for you, especially if you're going more aggro. And then again, if you just happen to draw it later and you also get the threaten effect, well, wonderful. Also keep in mind, this particular version of the effect does target any creature. So it can target your creatures if you just want to untap and give something haste. So that could every once in a while come into play. Most of the time, you'll be stealing one of your opponent's things and just beating down, though, with this card, which is pretty cool. So, yeah, very good in Limited. Could it see some play in Standard? A 3/1 haste creature for 3. Stranger things have happened, definitely. If there's an aggressive deck out there that's looking for some smaller creatures, it could make it at some point, but there is a lot of competition for that role right now. There's a lot of good aggressive creatures already out there. The Flame of Keld. Now, this is one of the sagas, and it costs a red and 1. We've seen this before, but we now find out that it is a uncommon. If you're not familiar with sagas, basically the way these work, you're going to cast it. When it enters the battlefield, you put a lore counter on it. That'll be your first one. When you put the first one on, you're going to do whatever it says next to the Roman numeral 1, in this case, discard your hand. On your pre-combat main phase, at the beginning of it, so right after you finish your draw step, you'll put the second counter on. And when you do, you're going to draw 2 cards. The next time around on your pre-combat main phase, you're going to put another lower counter on. This will be number 3. When that happens, if a red source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player this turn, it deals that much damage plus 2 to that permanent or player instead. Couple things you want to know. When you put the lore counters on, that does not use the stack. However, the abilities do go on the stack. That's important some of the time to know. So this card in particular, what would you do with it? Well, it's cheap, I'll give it that. This is one of those cards that's trying to refuel your hand if you're in a burn or aggro red deck, basically, right? So you're just running out of gas, you need to restock. This is going to be one of those restock cards. It's cheap, but it's probably not a turn 2 play necessarily, but allows you to maybe play this and still play another card that turn or something along those lines. Now, the tricky part with these sagas is they take a little time to develop, and I think in some cases might be a little too slow for standard. When there's other ways to draw cards out there, you don't necessarily need to jump through these hoops. Like, it only costs 2, but then you have to discard your hands, then you have to wait to your next pre-combat main phase, and then you get to draw your 2 cards finally, and then if you get that third effect, well, wonderful, but it's also dependent on board state too, which can be a little bit awkward. For limited, if I'm all in on an aggressive archetype and draft, maybe I'll try this thing out, but I think a lot of the time it doesn't make your cut. Saproling Migration. This is another brand new one. It's a green and 1 sorcery common. Kick 4, create 2 1/1 green Saproling creature tokens. If this was kicked, you get to create 4 instead. So this is actually pretty good for limited. I mean, just playing it on its own, getting 2 1/1s on like turn 2, I think is just fine a lot of the time. And if you're starting to try to go wide, or perhaps just trying to create some fodder that you could sacrifice to some black effects in Golgari or something like that, this will definitely do you well. It's another card that you get the bonus. If you draw it late, it doesn't feel as bad because of the kicker, so I do like that. Is there a standard deck that's exploiting this type of token creation? We're going to have to see a lot more strong cards before I get there at this point. Maybe, but I feel like this is more of a limited thing and maybe more of a casual thing for players that want to play with some of these Saproling tokens, or perhaps something you try out in Commander. Guardians of Koilos. This costs 5. It's an artifact creature construct. This is a common 4/4. When this enters the battlefield, you may return another target historic permanent you control to its owner's hand. Another card we're seeing for the first time. I like the effect. I mean, there's a lot of things you can bounce. You can reset sagas with this. So once you play the saga, you get maybe the effect 1, the effect 2, then bounce it back to your hand, play it again. So you get a little bit of a repeat value there. Again, sometimes just a good enters the battlefield effect on a legendary creature. This could be decent. Problem is it costs 5 though, and that isn't super appealing. So I don't see this crossing over into standard because of that casting cost. In limited, a 4/4 for 5 isn't the worst thing in the world. It might not always make your cut, but it could be just fine depending on if you just need a big creature in that spot. And if you have, again, a reason to use that ability, then all of a sudden it gets better. Again, you might have some sagas or good legendary enters the battlefield effects or something like that. So yeah, there's reasons to use this card, but it won't always make your cut probably. Alright, with that being said, those are the cards for today. I'm looking forward again to seeing more of this set. We've seen a lot of it, but I am actually pretty excited to see rarities now on a lot of these cards that we have seen previously. That's pretty cool. So there'll be more information coming, no doubt, as we get more previews. I'll be putting out more videos. Also, too, we'll do a follow-up and let you know more about the whole Brawl thing that's coming for Commander. But until next time, thanks for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe. Have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.